Section 8, page 46. That's enough, the policeman said, and told the girl to go away. Raymond was to stay in his room till summoned to the police station. You ought to be ashamed of yourself, the policeman added. Getting so tight you can't stand steady. Why you are shaking all over? I am not tight, Raymond explained. Only when I see you standing there and looking at me, I can't help trembling. That's only natural. Then he closed his door, and we all went away. Mary and I finished getting our lunch ready, but she hadn't any appetite, and I ate nearly all. She left at 1, and then I had a nap. Toward 3, there was a knock at my door, and Raymond came in. He sat down on the edge of my bed, and for a minute or two said nothing. I asked him how it had gone off. He said it had all gone quite smoothly at first, as per program. Only then she would slapped his face, and he would see red and started thrashing her. As for what happened after that, he needn't tell me, as I was there. Well, I said, you taught her a lesson, all right, and that's what you wanted, isn't it? He agreed and pointed out that whatever the police did, that wouldn't change the fact she would have her punishment. As for the police, he knew exactly how to handle them. But he would like to know if I would expected him to return the blow when the policeman hit him. I told him I hadn't expected anything whatsoever, and anyhow, I had no use for the police. Raymond seemed pleased and asked if I would like to come out for a stroll with him. I got up from the bed and started brushing my hair. Then Raymond said that what he really wanted was for me to act as his witness. I told him I had no objection, only I didn't know what he expected me to say. It is quite simple, he replied. You have only got to tell them that the girl had let me down. So I agreed to be his witness. We went out together, and Raymond suited me a brandy in a cafe. Then we had a game of billiards. It was a close game, and I lost by only a few points. After that, he proposed going to a brothel, but I refused. I didn't feel like it. As we were walking slowly back, he told me how pleased he was at having paid out his mistress so satisfactorily. He made himself extremely amiable to me, and I quite enjoyed our walk. When we were nearly home, I saw old Salamana on the doorstep. He seemed very excited. I noticed that his dog wasn't with him. He was turning like a teetotum, looking in all directions, and sometimes peering into the darkness of the hall with his little bloodshot eyes. Then he would mutter something to himself and start gazing up and down the street again. Raymond asked him what was wrong, but he didn't answer at once. Then I heard him grunt, "The bastard, the filthy cur!" When I asked him where his dog was, he scoffed at me and snapped out, "Gone!" A moment later, all of a sudden, he launched out into it. "I will take him to the parade ground as usual." There was a fair on, and you could hardly move for the crowd. I stopped at one of the booths to look at the handcuff king. When I turned to go, the dog was gone. I've been meaning to get a smaller collar, but I never thought the brute could slip it and get away like that. Raymond assured him the dog would find its way home, and told him stories of dogs that had traveled miles and miles to get back to their masters. But this seemed to make old fellow even more worried than before. "Don't you understand? They will do away with him. The police, I mean. It is not likely anyone will take him in and look after him. With all those cops, he puts everybody off." I told him that there was a pound at the police station where stray dogs are taken. His dogs was certain to be there, and he could get it back on the payment of a small charge. He asked me how much the charge was, but there I couldn't help him. Then he flew into a rage again. "It is likely I will give money for a mutt like that? No damned fear, they can kill him, for all I care." And he went on calling his dog the usual names. Raymond gave a laugh and turned into the hall. I followed him upstairs, and we parted on the landing. A minute or two later, I heard Salamanos' footsteps and a knock on my door. When I opened it, he halted for a moment in the doorway. "Excuse me, I hope I am not disturbing you." I asked him in, but he shook his head. He was staring at his toe caps, and the gnarled old hands were trembling. Without meeting my eyes, he started talking. "They won't really take him from me, will they, Monsieur Mansell? Surely they wouldn't do a thing like that. If they do, I don't know what will become of me." I told him that, so far as I knew, they kept stray dogs in the pond for 3 days, waiting for their owners to call for them. After that, they disposed of the dogs as they thought fit. He stared at me in silence for a moment. Then he said, "Good evening." After that, I heard him pacing up and down his room for quite a while. Then his bed creaked. Through the wall, there came to me a little wheezing sound, and I guessed that he was weeping. For some reason, I don't know what, I began thinking of mother. But I had to get up early next day, so as I wasn't feeling hungry, I did without supper and went straight to bed. Raymond rang me up at the office. He said that a friend of his, to whom he had spoken about me, invited me to spend next Sunday at his little seaside bungalow just outside Algiers. I told him I would have been delighted, only I had promised to spend Sunday with a girl. Raymond promptly replied that she could come too. In fact, his friend's wife would be very pleased not to be only woman in a party of men. I would have liked to hang up at once, as my employer doesn't approve of my using the office phone for private calls. But Raymond asked me to hold on. He had something else to tell me, and that was why he would ring me up, though he could have waited till the evening to pass on the invitation. "It is like this," he said. "I've been shadowed all the morning by some Arabs. One of them is the brother of that girl I had the row with. If you see him hanging round the house when you come back, pass me the word." I promised to do so. Just then my employer sent for me. For a moment I felt uneasy, as I expected he was going to tell me to stick to my work and not waste time chattering with friends over the phone. However, it was nothing of the kind. He wanted to discuss a project he had in view, though so far he would come to no decision. It was to open a branch at Paris, so as to be able to deal with the big companies on the spot, without postal delays, and he wanted to know if I would like a post there. "You are a young man," he said, "and I'm pretty sure you would enjoy living in Paris, and, of course, you could travel about France for some months in the year." I told him I was quite prepared to go, but really I didn't care much one way or the other. He then asked if a change of life, as he called it, didn't appeal to me, and I answered that one never changed his way of life. One life was as good as another, and my present one suited me quite well. At this he looked rather hurt, and told me that I always shilly-shallied, and that I lacked ambition, a grave defect to his mind, when was in business. I returned to my work. I would have preferred not to vex him, but I saw no reason for changing my life. By and large, it wasn't an unpleasant one. As a student, I had plenty of ambition of the kind he meant, but when I had to drop my studies, I very soon realized all that was pretty futile. Mary came that evening and asked me if I would marry her. I said I didn't mind. If she was keen on it, we would get married. Then she asked me again if I loved her. I replied, much as before, that her question meant nothing or next to nothing, but I suppose I didn't. "If that's how you feel," she said, "why marry me?" I explained that it had no importance, really, but if it would give her pleasure, we could get married right away. I pointed out that, anyhow, the suggestion came from her. As for me, I would merely said yes. Then she remarked that marriage was a serious matter, to which I answered no. She kept silent after that, staring at me in a curious way. Then she asked, "Suppose another girl had asked you to marry her, I mean, a girl you liked in the same way as you like me. Would you have said yes to her, too?" Naturally. Then she said she wondered if she really loved me or not. I, of course, couldn't enlighten her as to that. And after another silence, she murmured something about my being a queer fellow. And I dare say that's why I love you, she added. But maybe that's why one day I will come to hate you. To which I had nothing to say, so I said nothing. She thought for a bit, then started smiling and taking my arm, repeated that she was in earnest, she really wanted to marry me. All right, I answered. We will get married whenever you like. I then mentioned the proposal made by my employer, and Mary said she would love to go to Paris. When I told her I would live in Paris for a while, she asked me what it was like. A dingy sort of town, to my mind, masses of pigeons and dark courtyards, and the people have washed out white faces. Then we went for a walk all the way across the town by the main streets. The women were good lookers, and I asked Mary if she too noticed this. She said yes, and that she saw what I meant. After that, we said nothing for some minutes. However, as I didn't want her to leave me, I suggest we should dine together at Celeste's. She would have loved to dine with me, she said, only she was booked up for the evening. We were near my place, and I said, au revoir then. She looked me in the eyes. Don't you want to know what I'm doing this evening? I did want to know, but I hadn't thought of asking her, and I guessed she was making a grievance of it. I must have looked embarrassed, for suddenly she started laughing and bent toward me, putting her lips for a kiss. I went by myself to Celeste's. When I had just started my dinner, an odd-looking little woman came in and asked if she might sit at my table. Of course she might. She had a chubby face like a ripe apple, bright eyes, and moved in a curiously jerky way, as if she were on wires. After taking off her close-fitting jacket, she sat down and started studying the bill of fare with a sort of rapt attention. Then she called Celeste and gave her order, very fast but quite distinctly. One didn't lose a word. While waiting for the hors d'oeuvre, she opened her bag, took out a slip of paper and a pencil, and added up the bill in advance. Diving into her bag again, she produced a purse and took from it the exact sum, plus a small tip, and placed it on the cloth in front of her. End of the section, page 55.